Let's get to the shout out and give somebody some props who.
And we're back.
I even defended him when I guess he didn't deserve props, frankly.
I don't want to get greedy, but if Anarchy could give us a shout out beat, that
Kyrie
would be
Irving.
ill.
Matt, this was your pick.
Let's get
What?
to
I didn't know that you didn't give him props.
No, I did give him props when he was saying the Earth was flat
Why were you doing that?
because I thought it was funny. Because I liked the rap music it inspired.
Shout out.
This is out of control.
That's creepy.
Shout out.
That's weird.
Shout out.
Creepy.
Shout out.
Weird.
Shout out.
Crazy.
Shout out.
This is crazy.
Shout out.
This is out of control.
Shout out.
This is weird.
Shout out. Shout out.
Damn, where's Alex Jones? Kyrie Irving is a great basketball player, and he, about a year ago, it was only like a year ago, right? 2 years ago?
Yeah, I'd say about a year ago, maybe.
Year ago. He had some, he's also, I don't know if he's still a vegan, but he had some vegan brain going on. All love to vegan listeners.
Looks like
and vegan
February
viewers.
2017.
He was on this, and honestly, like, I guess I trolled it a little bit. I didn't realize that this flat earth thing was such a big thing until Kyrie Irving came out with it. He's a really good basketball player. And like many athletes, and he points out in this clip, he's a super young dude. And I actually just like this example. We just wanted to highlight this example of, and this could be applied to so many things, of just any public figure just copping to making a mistake in a non-egoic and non-defensive manner and keeping it moving.
Yeah, this was at the Monday. This was speaking Monday at the Forbes Under 30 Summit in Boston. So
The Forbes Under 30
you know,
Summit.
Forbes is like, what's that business about?
Yeah, what's the real the flat Earth, right? Yeah.
You said you're joking, and then you weren't joking. So which is it? Which side are you on?
Well, I mean, hopefully after this, I'm done answering.
Good. Let's clear it up for good. You never have to be asked
Clear it
again.
up for good. I mean, people are gonna ask me regardless, but I think the like what you say and what you do and how you mean it. At the time, I was like huge into conspiracies. Everybody's been there. Everybody's been there. Like, yo, what's going on with our world? You know, like you click a YouTube click and it goes like how deep the rabbit hole goes. It's like, yo, you start telling all your friends like, yo, did you see that? Did you watch this video? I'm telling you, and it was. And at the time, it was like, you're like innocent in it, but you realize the effect of the power of voice, and even if you believe in that, it's like you're like, well, don't come out and say that stuff. That's for intimate conversations, because perception, how you're received, it just changes. Like, no, I'm actually a smart-ass individual. Like, no, it's just
Yeah.
like, so it's not like it's not like I was just coming out and saying that. So it was like at the time, just didn't realize the effect, and
Right.
I was definitely at that time like, I'm a big conspiracy theorist. You
Right.
can't tell me anything.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sorry about all that, for all the science teachers, everybody coming up to me like, I gotta reteach my whole curriculum. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I love the pushback from the science teachers. I actually love the image of like a middle school science teacher going up and being like, dude, you're destroying my profession by putting this nonsense on Instagram and Twitter. Like, excuse you, you putz.
Yeah, and
But that's cool. He carried that perfectly. He reminded you, he's like, look, I'm human. Sorry, I spread it. And let's keep it moving.
And I actually think we can be too chicken little when it comes to how dangerous, like, say, our current media environment is with this stuff.
Yes.
Because I think people have always been able to go down rabbit holes. I actually think it's harder to maintain a cult's sort of sphere of
Impenetrability.
impenetrability. Jeez, I can't speak.
Impenetrability.
And, like we were saying earlier, in any given question with a large enough sample size, like 7 billion people on Earth, there's going to be a certain number of people that are going to be like, fuck you, I don't want to take your word for it. And I'm going to, like, take this opposite forking path that, like, is now available to me. But I actually think that the internet makes those harder to maintain over longer periods of time. You need to throw more of junk at people. But, like, I don't think people stay on them. This is just a hypothesis.
No, I think it's true in terms of it's some information, at least anecdotally, about cults as an example. Mm-hmm. It's a lot harder to maintain that if somebody can go on Google and
cults
see
are
like
all about
the
controlling
abuse
the
of
information.
the leaders,
Yeah.
The debunking of story. That's a common. I'm forgetting it. I'm listening for 30 for 30. No, I'm some new. I forget his name. A big yoga guru. All sorts of abuse. I'm listening to a podcast on it. Bikram. Right? And that's another thing. It was like just even relative to 2002 or 2008. Like there's just more people who look things up.
Yeah. I mean, cult literally,
Yeah.
you needed to control the culture of it.
Right. Exactly. I am curious, though. What conspiracy theory have you guys gone in the deepest on? I'm going to think of which one I have, too, while you tell me. I just honestly can't. Probably because the conspiracy theories that I believe in, I probably still believe in. So I'm trying to think of a good one that I've moved past.
Oh, one that I moved past? Oh, because
Well, actually, no. It could be either way. What's
was-
one you've either moved past or you still are like, you know what? I stand by it.
I think there's definitely been a cover-up of the Kennedy assassination, and I think probably
my
if
back and tell
all
me
was
it's
known,
That's
you
Matt.
would have CIA, mafia, and the Cubans involved and stuff like
So
that.
can I give you my, because I get in trouble because I think Kennedy one is one of the ones where I'm actually like the most like, I don't know that I necessarily believe the reports of the Warren Commission, but I'm not that conspiratorial about it in some ways, and partially I'm not because I'm not terribly convinced that JFK really did have, until maybe towards the end. I understand his rhetoric shifted, but he was a cold warrior and he was pretty good to go for most of his career. So it seems like was really the Bay of Pigs and a couple of speeches enough for the whole apparatus to flip on him like that?
It's hard to know. Like that stuff is the interesting question of it. I mean, I've read one book that Bobby Kennedy Jr. wrote a blurb on for the back. So
That is right.
but I've read it. It's kind of by this Catholic theologian guy. It's a bit out there, but it's fairly interesting. But he says it was because of Kennedy's attitude towards African national movements. So like the Patrice Lumumba killing and things like that. They realized
possible.
he couldn't be. And who knows? I mean, there was a lot of the Cuba stuff, the Bay of Pigs thing. I mean, the Bay of Pigs shit is so insane.
That pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah, I mean, and that was that was basically
That's that illicit history advantage you get on this show. Bay of Pigs.
I mean, if
Pissed
you
a
look
lot
at
of people off.
you look at it from the perspective of Kennedy might have stolen that election.
Might have literally stolen it. But he also ran to the right.
Right,
On the missile gap.
Exactly, and the missile gap possibly was a result of discussion with the Dulles brothers. Like they tipped him off on that stuff, and then he wins it, but by a razor thin margin. You have this entire state apparatus that thought it was Eisenhower's. Right, Eisenhower's military-industrial complex, and they thought Nixon was just going to roll in. Nixon was leading the Bay of Pigs from the White House because Eisenhower had the heart attacks, so
Right.
they were ready to go. And then Kennedy goes in. It's very strange because it's hard to know like what the Dulles brothers were doing there. It's hard. It's impossible really to know a lot of this stuff.
And then Kennedy lets the Bay of Pigs go forward. It's a disaster. And then he actually, instead of being like what almost every post-Kennedy leader would do, which is be like, you guys had a catastrophic mess up. What can I do? His attitude actually does change to
Well-
at least in those recordings where he's like, the fuck are you guys doing?
Yeah, he's pissed off, and it looks like the Bay of Pigs, from a certain angle, it looks like it was set up to prompt a full ground invasion of Cuba. By us.
That's my
Right.
understanding.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
that. That's definitely my
And
understanding.
Kennedy didn't do that.
Kennedy didn't
So
want
there
the
was
whole-
the
right.
you left those guys on the beach to get murdered, like sort of.
And then Ted
right-wing.
Cruz's dad comes.
And then and then activate Raphael Cruz.
Activate Raphael Cruz.
To go down to New Orleans and try to build up Oswald's cover as a communist, and then
And then there we go. All right, Griscom, what's your conspiracy theory?
Well, this is a conspiracy theory that the first time I heard, I was very wide-eyed. Have you ever heard of the Solutrean hypothesis before?
No.
So this is one that they basically found.
Sounds good.
They found all of these arrowheads in Newfoundland.
Newfoundland?
Right? Yeah, no, yeah,
Newfoundland.
yeah. in Canada,
Northeastern Canada.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't even. All right, I'm
and
learning.
and they
Sorry,
were
Canadian.
they were very similar to arrowheads that were found in southern Spain and southern France. So there became this whole theory that came about that maybe the Native Americans didn't come from Asia, that they actually came from Europe.
Very testy.
And I had a professor who was a big adherent of it, and it was like in college, and he was explaining it to me, and I remember thinking, it's like, wow, this is so interesting, like, this lost history. And then, so I was like, oh wow. And then when I talked to one of my friends at university who's a Native American activist, I was like, have you ever heard of this before? They're like they're like,
yes, asshole.
They're like, you mean that Nazi crap?
Right, right.
And and I found out that it's like, just like all of those hypotheses that always try to turn the gaze back to Europe. It was definitely like
Who was the
propagated by a bunch
professor,
of
if I might
Nazis.
ask? Do you remember?
I can't remember his name, but
okay.
he was an actual maniac.
Did he? Right. Did he have tenure?
No, he was an adjunct professor, which is really which is really funny, just because usually you think that the adjunct professors are always so afraid of getting in trouble.
Right. I was going to say, I would think that the sort of terrors of neoliberalism would keep that sort of thing in check.
He goes by @BallsOutAdjunct online.
There were a few people, I think, early on in like
I'm
promoting
an
the
adjunct.
theory
I don't care.
who I don't think had sympathies, but once they started being able to do, genetic testing and other things that sort of like proved it was completely, nonsense. The only people who are still holding on to it were weirdos who sort of think that there was an actual cover up.
Right.
Which is, absolute nonsense. But no, I don't have any good alien.
I've got one that I've since shed, but it might come back around. It was right when I first got the internet.
Right.
And I went online, and I have no idea how I happened across this. It was like one of those geo sites where it's on like a white background that like it's like wallpaper and then the Comic Sans font over it. Anyway, this big long thing about how elites were building an ark in the Rocky Mountains.
That's happening.
It's happening,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
like that's the thing.
That's one of those ones that's like it's not. It's take it literal seriously, but not literally.
Yeah, exactly. But
right,
you know what?
like
I
that's
took it-
not happening. But Peter Thiel's buying a bunker in New Zealand.
I'll tell you how
Right.
literally I took it. Is I
Yeah.
printed out about 35 pages, and I brought it to my German class in 7th grade. And I decided to show it to my German teacher, Frau Martin, who I had a bit of a crush on, and she looked at it and she's just like, "Oh, okay, good."
All right, that's great. Kid who has a crush on me is printing out geosites pages now. That's wonderful.
Oh, wait, this is very important, actually. I did remember one.
Okay, go ahead.
So I remember very quickly when I was a young boy in Austin, Texas, flipping through the television
That was
channels.
very Alex Jones of you. I remember I was a young boy in Austin, Texas.
Flipping through the television channels, and I ended up on the public access channel.
Right.
And a very important discovery was being talked about was, Arnold Schwarzenegger is very likely to run for president. I don't know when this was, maybe in the early 2000s. And the person on television was very worried about this, and he was giving us dire warnings about how the founding fathers very much purposefully put in the naturalized citizens clause
That's
into
right.
the Constitution
That's right.
to prevent the Austrians.
Specifically the Austrians.
from coming into our country and taking over and returning it to the monarchy. And it was going on. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. And
This is
Arnold
terrible.
Schwarzenegger is coming, to destroy the republic. I must have been like 8 or 9 or something.
I'm the
Arnold
king now.
Schwarzenegger is coming out to take over the republic, and this guy was very passionate, screaming at the television. Only later did I learn that man's name. That man's
Nice.
name, Alex Jones.
Yes. Beautiful. I'm trying to think of one. I mean, I totally believe the Randall Sullivan reporting on like basically like a rogue unit of the LAPD killing Biggie. I pretty much totally like, and some of that still holds up. Like there were all these cops that were, some of them were part of the Ramparts division, which did have this like, it was an anti-gang division in the LAPD, and it was like, I think there was like a federal investigation of it for like killing people, planting drugs. It's like what Training Day is based off of. And some of those guys in off-duty hours worked security for Death Row Records, and some of them were like actually members of the Pyro Bloods while they were also cops. And there's like this whole rabbit hole about like basically this LAPD, it's actually kind of tragic. This guy Henry Poole, like he basically, I mean, I'm sure I'm going to offend people by saying this, but he basically lost his mind. Like he quit LAPD because he thought there was a massive cover up. And then he did a civil suit with Biggie's mother for the whole city of Los Angeles. And again, like there's some truth to it, but he also had like a pattern that he really wanted to see. So it was sort of like a story of kind of like obsession too. But I totally, until there, I mean, there was some like Occam's razor stuff that came out about that kind of made more sense. But I bought that. And there still is like an element. It's like one of the things, it's like, there is some truth to this. Like there were cops.
And I always think like, why the fuck do you think you should get the benefit of the doubt? Like in the Gary Webb CIA cocaine stuff, it's like
I believe that stuff 100%.
Well, the only thing
I think the Gary Webb stuff's pretty.
The only thing that's quibbled with is
Yeah.
I guess Gary Webb himself even didn't say it was like a main driver or whatever, right? So it's
Right.
degree, but like, what are we arguing about at that point?
Yeah. And also I think that there's like, what are we arguing about? And there's also like, he identified one route. I think there were like, the reality was it's not this, like the Contras used cocaine to fund their war. And basically the question is like, does it mean that like the CIA personally packaged vials up to deliver in South Central? No, that's probably where you get more conspiratorial. But did they like know for a fact that it was happening and I'm sure interfere with other agency investigations to protect known traffickers? Like, of course. That's just, I mean, and that's across the board. I mean, that's in Afghanistan, that's in Vietnam. Like, drugs make you liquid. Like, and the CIA works with liquid. Like, you're looking to organize a death squad in a developed country. Where do you think you're going to get money for that from? Right?
Yeah, well, which queen was it where she was basically like the opium? When was the British Empire was basically like the opium dealer?
Oh, right. When they forced opium on the Chinese. I don't remember which queen, but like, yeah, it's just that stuff's just economics.